Good morning. So this is a pretty short video on how to use Geometry HD's normal map to bake in that high-res detail in Substance Painter. Before we get to Zbrush though, there's just one thing we need to take note of is when we're creating our new scene, we just want to note which normal map format we're going to be using. Now, if we're going into Unreal Engine, which you guys have been doing this year, and which is what I have been doing as well this past year, is this is going to be set to DirectX. The other option is OpenGL, which is more of a CPU-based approach. DirectX is more of a GPU approach to calculating things. But if we're using DirectX, we have to make sure we're flipping the G in the normal map export from Zbrush. So I'm going to go over to Zbrush. I've got this model. It's not finished, but you know it's getting there. And I'm going to let me have a sip of coffee. I'm going to export out these maps. All right, so let's do this. So Z plugin, multi-map exporter, and for this, I'm just going to export out, obviously I would do the displacement, normal, and texture from Polypaint. I'm just going to do the normal and texture from Polypaint. And because I don't have very many UDOMs, I am using 8K. There is a lot of detail there, right? So this isn't the high res. This is only 500,000 polys, right? If I were to hit A, you can see that my total number of polys is like in the over 100 million polys. Like this section here of the face is 43 million polys just for this section, right? So you get like all that individual pore detail and all of that stuff. So, you know, 100 million polys, you wouldn't be able to bring this into Substance. So that's why we're going to be using the normal map for this. So anyhow, let me get out of this. So A. So go back down to my highest non-Geometry HD. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my lowest level. So Shift D all the way down to my lowest level, which is 8,000, and I'm going to do this now. So Z plugin, normal, texture from Polypaint, and then under normal map, just make sure that we are using flip G, right? So that needs to be on. Remember to turn that off though if you're using it just for Maya. For Maya, this needs to be off, but just to bake our normals in Substance, that needs to be on. And yeah, and then we can export. So we just choose our folder and export. Now we are going to have to make sure that there's a dot after the name, but I'm going to rename that after. Okay, so I'm just going to pause and export. One other thing you're probably going to want to do is export out your low res from here as well. Because as you're sculpting, things change a little bit on the low res, like the faces will move around a bit or angle slightly differently, so you're going to want to probably use this also. So Fbx Export, and I'm just going to export out the body since that's what I'm working on, so just export that. I've already exported it, so I'm not going to do it again. And I'm going to go over to Substance Painter. Now you can see that here are my files. Here's my normal maps. They're pretty high res, or 8K. Now, flip G, it's going to look inverted here, but it's going to look right inside of Substance Painter for whatever reason, the way it calculates things. And I did put a dot after the normal map, so nm.1001, 2, and 3, and same with the texture map, so tm. 1001 and so on. So make sure there's that dot there, otherwise Substance won't see it as a UDOM sequence. Alright, so file, new. Let me see here. Yep, so I'm going to go. Remember, we can change this after, so I'll just go 2K for now, DirectX. I'm going to select here. Let me just pause so I can get to the folder. Alright, so here's the file. And open. Alright, so there we are. So this is, remember, the melted Michael Caine that you guys use for your scene project that I've resculpted here. Cool. And so I want to bring in the normal maps here. So, and the color information. So I'm going to bring in both those things. So add resources. So I'm just going to grab these 6 tiles and open. And they're going to be textures and current session. So I should see them as 2 UDOM sequences. There we are. Yep, 2 UDOM sequences. So let's do the bake. So I'm going to go over to my texture set settings and go down to this section here. So when you do your bake, these end up getting filled up with the bake information. But since we already have a normal map from Zbrush, we can use that as the starting point. So I'm going to metal drag this over my select normal map section. And that's going to add that to this guy. There we go. It's added on there, right? But that's not baked in, right? So if I were to hit or go through any of these guys here, well, we have our normal map, but nothing else has been baked. So let me just go back to material. So I'm going to use this to bake all of these other channels. So bake mesh maps. I'm going to go a bit larger. I'll go 8K since I'm using 8K. And there's a couple things we need to turn off here so that it bakes everything we need. So normal map, we're going to turn that off because we've already got a normal map. So we don't need to bake that again. Thickness, we have to turn that off. Now we could bake thickness separately just based off of the low res model. And let's see here, we can also turn off ID. For curvature to work, what we need to do is go into it, and we're not generating from mesh, we're generating from the texture. So we have to switch this to the generate from normal map, which is depreciated. And I'll make this joke again, I appreciate this feature. I don't know why they depreciated it. So and then just leave all that the same. Cool. And let me just double check one more thing. Go back to common. Yep, we're all good. So I'm going to bake my textures. So nothing else is turned on, so just bake textures. You can see it's using the the normal map to generate everything. So it's going to give us all this high res detail here. All right, so I'm going to pause while this is doing it. We'll check out the maps when it is done. There's the occlusion. It's going through right now. Now it's going through the curvature map. Now it's doing position. And now it's done. So, okay. Cool. So now we've got our high-res bake on here. So it looks pretty good. Again, this isn't finished. I'm going to have to redo a couple of small parts, but you know, it looks starting to look pretty good. Then we can bring in our color. So for the color, I'm just going to bring it into a fill layer. And I'm just going to turn all of this stuff off. And I can put this into the base color. There we go. All right, so now we have our color in here. And if we wanted to see subsurface scattering, we can do that. So if we go into here, and I'm just going to turn it on, so activate subsurface scattering. And then we're going to go over to here, just make sure we're on alpha test, which I think is this guy. Yeah, alpha test. And then we're just going to turn on subsurface down here, which it is, but I'm going to switch it to skin. And then we just have to activate our scatter over here under the texture set settings. And then we just have to turn it on. So scatter. Cool. All right, and then we can turn on the subsurface here. So, you know, that's a little bit much, but you know, we could always dial the overall scale down here. And then we can go in and paint the areas where the scatter is going to be. And you know, things like roughness, we could dial down and paint in custom roughness maps, right, where it needs to be a little bit shinier and things like that. Cool. All right, so that's that. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will talk to you guys later. Okay, cheers, bye.